Bishop, as the world tunes in to observe the opening days of the third ever in U.S. history impeachment trial of a president, you and I are going to focus our attention on eugenics, social engineering, and some of the other sinister plays that are afoot. How are you, Bishop? Welcome back to the show.
I am doing great. Thank you so much, Jason, for this awesome opportunity here today as we wrap up this 8-part series on eugenics.
Absolutely. And you know, Bishop, there's been quite a lot of interest in your series. I think most people are finding it extremely informative. People who are tuning in for the first time can also follow the Bishop on Life Radio. He's syndicated all over the country, and you can support the global spiritual revolution by going to paypal.me/GSRR Media Group. And Bishop, just let everybody know where they can hear you on the radio and see you through social media.
Absolutely. LifeRadioNJ.com/Gaiters. That's Gaiter. Quickly, LifeRadioNJ.com/Gaiters. And also, you can listen to us nationally and internationally on the USARadioNetwork.com, USARadio.com, as well as the iHeartMedia Network in the iHeartMedia Group.
Yeah. And you've been speaking to us, Bishop, about the foundation of the Nation of Islam. We've shifted now to Scientology. I want to let you know before we begin, I've been contacted by two members of the audience who tell me that they are practitioners of Scientology. One was very polite and professional in her communications. I've communicated with her before about other topics we discuss on the show. The other, I have to say, was quite belligerent and very erratic in his communication with me. My initial response to anyone who challenges anything that a guest presents on the show is that I want to learn about the information that the challenger has and learn the nature of what they'd like to share with us. And certainly if they have fact-based information that can help us all understand the topic better, I want that person to come on the show. Now, of course, Bishop, this doesn't mean that any old person can call me and they're guaranteed a platform on here. If people are rude, insulting, unprofessional, erratic, frankly, if you seem like a crazy person, I'm not going to entertain that. And I had a conversation with this individual who was just saying that I was lying, that you were lying. Basically came down to this. I called the guy up on the phone and I said to him, "What am I lying about?" And he said, "Well, you're giving the bishop a platform on your show." I said, "Yeah, but how is that lying?" Even if the bishop has said something incorrect, I'm certainly not lying by giving you a platform. So this individual admitted that I wasn't lying, but yet he had publicly smeared me with that statement. So I told him that he'd lost his opportunity to appear on the show. The other individual who I invited to join us said that it was against the rules of Scientology to publicly speak about it. So I have to also tell people that Crowdsource the Truth is not about me becoming an expert in every topic that every guest raises on the show. I could not possibly do that. I can't learn everything that Charles Ortel knows and vet every word that he says. I can't learn about everything that the bishop knows. I can't learn about all these disparate topics, but this is why I invite experts onto the show to share their information with all of us. And that's what we're going to continue to do today, Bishop.
You know, the great Jim Garrison, the attorney that was portrayed by Kevin Costner in the 1992 movie JFK, once said, and what I'm about to say, this is nothing personal against the two Scientologists who have contacted you. And let me say this again, this is not anything toward those two Scientologists. But Jim Garrison once said, and my father told me this many years ago, what else do you expect from a pig other than the grunt? And of course, they're going to defend it, because if they ever admit, Jason, that they were wrong, you're talking millions and millions and millions of dollars. So people would rather perpetuate a lie than to expose the truth. And in this part 8 of this, what we call this eugenics program, this
Hmm.
eugenics series entitled Scientology, the Third Opium War of Deception. Again, Scientology, the Third Opium War of Deception. We got some new listeners from the GSRR radio site, from our side, who are listening, and just want to go through a quick rehaps of what we talked about last week concerning the Boule. Now,
Yes.
the Nation of Islam with Louis Farrakhan being a part of the Omega Psi Phi fraternity, which is the Boule Secret Society, including Dick Gregory, Alpha Phi Alpha, Dr. Charles H. Wesley, his book, The History of Sigma Pi Phi, or Boule. On page 146, he talks about the Divine Nine of the National Pan Hellenic Council of the nine Black Greek lettered secret society fraternities, okay, who are also Prince Hall Masons. That's a great picture there that you're showing there, Jason. Now, remember, every Black Boule is a 33rd degree Mason, but no Black person can ever attain a 33rd and one half degree.
Hmm.
Only non-Black persons. That's another topic for another day. So the Boules, they are the gatekeepers. They are the advisors to the system of the global Luciferian system. Now, remember, we talked about the historical Knights of the Round Table, from anywhere from 9 knights up until really as high as 150. But the 13 Illuminati families that control 99% of the world's wealth, you're talking about the Rockefellers, the Oppenheimers, the Warburgs, we're talking about the Rothschilds, okay? We're
Hmm.
talking about DuPonts, the Vanderbilts that you made mention on last week. So the 9 knights of the uh, Illuminati round table are protected, Jason, by the nine Greek letter Black Secret Society fraternities, okay? And so we're talking about Omega Psi Phi, we're talking about Alpha Phi Alpha. And so those of you, you can always click on the Divine Nine of the Black Greek lettered secret societies that really actually was started with also with Rothschild money, as well as Rockefeller money. Many of the financial backing to that began the Boule Secret Society in the nine Greek lettered Black secret societies was through the Rockefeller Foundation. Another topic for another day. So each knight of the round table who owns the table are protected by each of the nine Prince Hall, nine Greek letter Black secret societies. So that's on page 146 of Dr. Charles Wesley's book, The History of Sigma Pi Phi, where he talks about, through the history of Sigma Pi Phi, that the Divine Nine of the Pan Hellenic Council are not the owners of the table, Jason, but they are the protectors of the table. They don't own the crab barrel. They are just the overseers of the crab barrel, whose design is to keep the Black masses here in America in check.
And as
And
you mentioned that, Bishop, I'm reminded that during our very first interview, you spoke about the crab barrel. It's interesting, the history of Sigma Pi Phi is one of these books that Amazon or someone has determined is $129 to purchase, which seems like a lot. I never get that because to me, if there's that much demand for the book, wow, here it's up to
yeah,
$900. It just seems, if there were that much demand, why not just reprint it or put it on Kindle or something like that? I always feel like they're doing this to prevent more people from reading the book. And one question very quickly on Boule. We've got Johnny Dank asking if Professor Griff of Public Enemy is a Boule.
that is a great question. We got Professor Griff coming on Global Spiritual Revolution Radio
Whoa.
on the 24th. That is a great question from your listener, and I will definitely find out. I don't know, but that is a great question that I would definitely ask Professor Griff, not to put him on the spot when he comes on the program. I may even do it before we go live on that day. And if he is, we're going to have him on anyway. So great question, great question. And to all of your listeners on March the 24th, Global Spiritual Revolution Radio is going to have Progressive Griff on our broadcast to talk about the Divine Nine, who are the protectors of the global aristocracy of the Luciferian order. So great question. And I'm probably going to get back with your listener, your caller, probably in the next few weeks to give that specific person that answer. Great question. But the Boulets are the caretakers of the, not just the 99%, they are the caretakers of the 1%, and the 1% is the masses, not just of Black America. They are the caretakers of the global 1% as well. So as we talked about last week, Jason, concerning this third opium war of deception concerning Scientology, the boule is a Greek word signifying they are the protectors, they are the advisors to the king. And so the Nation of Islam, through Louis Farrakhan, has been assigned by the deep state, not just to join the Church of Scientology, but to protect it. And I want to talk about that here in the next few minutes. So the term boule represents the lower level, the lowest level of the Greek parliament today. And that term boule also can be interpreted into the word bouleia, capital B-O-U-L-A-I, which means they are the protectors. Okay. And matter of fact, during the Greek Hellenistic era of Aristotle, Plato, and Socrates, Jason, boulets were not elected, boulets were selected. Come on, Barack Obama. Barack Obama was not elected. Barack Obama was selected through a Greek word, what we call sortition, capital S-O-R-T-I-T-I-O-N, which means selected. So Barack Obama, maybe we can get into a series concerning his background. He was not elected. He was selected. So Jesse Jackson is selected, okay? LeBron James is selected. Kobe Bryant is selected. Reverend Al Vitamin B Deficient Sharpton is selected. These Black men and women, Oprah Winfrey, who is a witch, all of them, Jason. And the reason why I say Oprah Winfrey is a witch, she is a proponent, a worshiper of the goddess, not just of the goddess Diana, concerning Dianetics, Dianism. We talked about that last week. But Oprah Winfrey is a proponent of the religion called Gaia, capital G-A-I-A. Concerning the doctrine of the goddess Gaia, that you as the individual are your own God. Another topic for another day. All of
They
these
talk about aliens quite a bit, don't they, Gaia? Or am I confusing that with something else?
They talk about aliens as well. And, it's interesting that you should bring up the term aliens, and we're going to be bringing up the term Stargate. That is connection to the Church of Scientology. This is deep. You see, the Scientologists who are listening, they have never heard of this type of impartation of teaching before, because the higher echelons of power, Jason, within Scientology, they're not teaching the people this. Because if the people knew the truth, the totality of the truth, they would leave Scientology today. But yes, getting back to your statement, Gaia is connected to, then we're talking about UFOs and Area 51 and aliens. And so, absolutely. So when we talk about the term boule, we also talked about back in June the term archon, right? Capital A-R-C-H-O-N. The archons are every Black male is a archon in the Boule Secret Society. The women are called the archias. The Latin Vulgate expression for archon is demon, and archias is demoness, okay? And so there's another term from archon, that is the term abraxas. And allow me to spell that, capital A-B-R-A-X-A-S. So abraxas means great archon. So that term abraxas, Jason, is condensed into the term what we call abracadabra. I
Huh.
kid you. So the term boule, archon, abraxas, okay, abraxia or abracadabra is also the logo that's on the Starbucks coffee cup, okay? That was one of the gods that Aleister Crowley had incorporated into the secret of the temple, which also Jack Parsons incorporated, which also L. Ron Hubbard incorporated. So then, when we talk about the boules, okay, the archons, abraxas, abraxia, or demon, or abracadabra. So the boules, Jason, are never elected. They are selected not through a vote, but they're selected through the bloodline. And that's another topic for another day. So when we talk about Scientology, the third opium war of deception, remember in 1941, we talked about this last week. There was a Boule convention in Los Angeles, California, at the Greek amphitheater at Griffith Park. Now, the term Griffin is the acronym for the term Griffith Park. And Griffith Park was the location that composed of 3,000 acres that was donated to the city of Los Angeles prior to 1940 by a man by the name of Griffith J. Griffith. Okay, another topic for another day.
His first
And
name
so,
was Griffith as well?
yes,
It's
Griffith
weird.
J. Griffith, yes. And you know what's so interesting, Jason? Just giving kind of a rehash, going back to the foundation, just in case some of those who are listening today were not privy to this teaching last week. Dr. Emmett Scott oversaw the 1941 Boule Convention in Los Angeles at the Greek Amphitheater. Notice that Greek Amphitheater at Griffith Park. So then there was another man that I just found out yesterday through my research, Jason, that was located at this 1941 convention. His name was Dr. Robert R. Moton, capital Moton. Oh, that's interesting. Who was Dr. Robert R. Moton? He was the second president of Tuskegee University. So then, Dr. Emmett Scott and Dr. Robert R. Moton were both high-ranking boules, Jason, who were working covertly with President Woodrow Wilson from
Hmm.
1913 to 1921 to create the syphilis conspiracy, in which Booker T. Washington, who used to be a Boule, but he left the Boule Secret Society a month before his death in 1915. So then Booker T. Washington dies of complications that came from syphilis. Interesting. Another topic for another day. So then, as we move forward here, so then there's a book called Tuskegee's Truths, Rethinking the Tuskegee Syphilis Conspiracy. Again, Tuskegee's Truths, Rethinking the Tuskegee Syphilis Conspiracy. And it said there in page 361, Jason, and I quote, that Julius Rosenwald and his $5 million, which he donated to Dr. Robert R. Moton and Dr. Emmett Smith. And by the way, to African Americans who know about Robert R. Moton, Dr. Moton, okay, was one of the boules who took down Dr. Marcus Mosiah Garvey. You and I talked about Dr. Garvey back in June. So on page 361 of the Tuskegee Truths, Rethinking the Tuskegee Syphilis Study, Julius Rosenwald, through the Woodrow Wilson National Fellowship Foundation, gave millions of dollars, Jason, to Dr. Emmett Scott and Dr. Robert R. Moton to begin the syphilis conspiracy as early as 1916, which did not become enacted until 1932. Also, through the Rockefeller Foundation, supported the syphilis conspiracy. from 1932 to 1972. So what I'm doing, Jason, is kind of rebuilding this foundation again concerning Scientology being the third open war of deception and how Scientology has now crept into Black America. And there's a Scientology center and church here in Harlem, New York. I'm going to bring that up later on if I had time. So quickly here, to all of you, your listeners, Jason, if you get a chance, look up a Georgia state senator by the name of Donzella James, capital Donzella. Donzella James, on the 19th of January, 2020, the state of Georgia, through the lieutenant governor, Jeff Duncan, capital GEOWF Duncan, appointed Donzella James to be a part of a 24-member commission, Jason, to remove federal oversight of the American Psychiatric Association and the American Psychological Association in Washington, D.C. In other words, Donzella James, who is not only a boule in Atlanta, Georgia, but she's also a Scientologist, was put on the board of this 24-member commission by Georgia's Lieutenant Governor, Jeff Duncan, in order to oversee the mental health system of the state of Georgia. In other words, like I said last week, Jason, L. Ron Hubbard was totally against the DSM-5, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, edition level 5 of the American Psychological and Psychiatric Association. But yet L. Ron Hubbard, a month before he died, he suffered a stroke, and I'm going to talk about that here in the next few minutes. And L. Ron Hubbard was injected with an antipsychotic drug, but yet he was against the American Psychological and Psychiatric Association. So as we move forward, I just wanted to relay that foundation just for those who were not privy to last week's teaching, that the Boule Secret Society is not beloved by the Church of Scientology, but they are being used as pawns, as political and social pawns, to perpetuate Scientology into Black America. Now let's get into Dianetics. We talked about that last week. The term dia is a Greek word through mind. So Dianetics, all right, is rooted in what we call psychosomatic cleansing, or what they call clearing. So another term for clearing, Jason, is the term clairvoyance. Now, within the religion of Jainism, they teach the occultic teaching called Dianism, okay, which is rooted in the Dianic cult of what we call sexual initiation, okay? And in Ronald D. Wolf, who was the estranged son of L. Ron Hubbard, said under oath before his death that through the e-meter, Jason, the auditor or the modifier would always ask the candidate the question concerning his or her sexual past. So they would build a database concerning that person's sexual past. That is Dianetics. That is Dianism. That is part of the Dianic cult, which goes back to the 1800s. Now, the term Dianetic is interpreted through the Sanskrit of the word dharana, capital DHARANA, which means the self is God, the individual is God. So dharana, the acronym for dharana, is the term di, capital THRI with the H silent, which means clearing, clairvoyance, Dianetics. You and I talked about Bonnie Matheson on last week. He was the creator of the e-meter in 1951. And so then in 1989, I just found out
Sorry,
recently.
Bishop, before you move off of all that Diana stuff, I just want to remind everybody about this woman, Diana Dors, who was married to Richard Dawson and is closely associated with the Bob Kramer sex scandals. He was the star of Hogan's Heroes, who was well known for having these sex parties and recording them. Diana Dors was, sort of a model, actress, sex symbol in the 50s and 60s. I don't know if you know this, Bishop, but obviously you're probably familiar with the Beatles and the cover of their famous
Yeah.
album, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. I think a lot of people mistakenly took this image here to be Marilyn Monroe. This is Diana Dors, pictured on the cover of the Beatles album.
Wow, I did not know that. Jay, excellent research on that. And again, every time you do it, every time, Jason, you always hit a nerve with me that opens doors that I normally would not go into. Excellent research, and that's why you're a great host. It's interesting as we dissect and unpack this Scientology even more to another level for your listeners. In 1989, former CIA officer Miles Copeland wrote in his memoirs entitled The Game Player, Occultism in High Places. And he said unequivocally, Jason, that the Central Intelligence Agency was in collusion with the Church of Scientology during the
Wow.
1960s. That's Miles Copeland. And his memoirs entitled The Game Player, Occultism in High Places. He said the Central Intelligence Agency was in collusion, was in cahoots with Scientology and L. Ron Hubbard in the 1960s.
Hmm.
Now, if you get a chance, Jason, type in beginning of the 1990s, okay? Greek police executed raids in Athens, Greece. Okay, beginning in the 1990s, Greek police executed raids in Athens, Greece, of the Church of Scientology. Or simply go to orthochristian.com. That's capital ORTHO Christian, no spaces or dashes in between, orthochristian.com. And it says specifically there, and it shows a document which is around the 10th photo down, Jason. Okay. It shows that the Church of Scientology was rendered by the CIA. It said specifically that the CIA rendered to Scientology's foreign branches. And there's a copy of the document. That's, I would say, the 10th photo down in orthochristian.com, or just type in the Greek police raid the Church of Scientology. There, and I believe in facts. I believe in proof. So there is a document, an unclassified Greek governmental document that shows the CIA's complicity within the Church of Scientology. It's interesting, Jason, that I didn't bring this up until today. That on page 336 of the original edition, and when I say original edition, it may not be in the present day Dianetical book, but in the original edition, Jason, on page 336 of Dianetics, it's almost, I would say, around 3/4 in the book where most people would not even see it. They were missing. And I think that was designed by L. Ron Hubbard. He says in the original edition on page 336 of the book Dianetics, and I quote, "The 7-year-old girl who shudders because a man kisses her is not computing. She is reacting to an engram since at age 7. She should see nothing wrong in a kiss, not even a passionate one. There must have been an earlier experience, possibly prenatal, which made men or kissing very bad." In other words, of this original edition of Dianetics on page 336, which may not be in the present day Dianetics because it's probably removed by the Church of Scientology, it's suggesting, Jason, that this 7-year-old girl should see nothing wrong in a man's passionate kiss. And Tony Ortega brings this up as well. So, in other words, I'm not exposing any particular person outside of L. Ron Hubbard. What I'm doing is exposing the very dogma or doctrine of Dianetics, which is the foundation of the Church of Scientology. Now, it's interesting, Jason, as we move forward here on Scientology, the third open war of deception. Page 70 of the book entitled, Witch Cult in Western Europe, a Study in Anthropology. Again, Witch Cult in Western Europe, a Study in Anthropology. Okay? So it says here on page 70 that the term scientific, which we call Scientology today, the term scientific is a interconnected word of the term Dianism. We talked about that, or Dianetic. So then this book, which was published in 1921 through the Oxford Clarendon Press of 1921, page 70, that Scientology is a cult that's rooted not only in the goddess Diana in Acts 19:28, but it is also a perfect representation, adjacent, of the pan-European goddess Diana, Dianic, Dianetics. So then, through Scientology, this is the template, Jason, of this of what we call mental health through Scientology, where it only cleans the trauma, Jason, but does not remove the trauma. I got to preface that. It only cleans, okay, or compartmentalize the trauma, but it never removes the trauma, okay? So in 1971, through the FDA, L. Ron Hubbard was forced to put a label on every e-meter stating that the e-meter can never take away diseases. And let me preface that. In the 1971 FDA report through the Food and Drug Administration, L. Ron Hubbard had to label every e-meter stating, and I quote, that the e-meter can never take away diseases. It was not designed. But yet the Church of Scientology is propagating a lie through this third open war of deception. You and I talked about the term thetan. Now in Scientology, that represents the soul, that represents the consciousness. And that term thetan is interconnected to the Greek word theta, capital Theta. Oh, that's interesting. That goes back to our Black Greek light societies of Delta Sigma Theta or Iota Phi Theta. So then in Persian mythology, Jason, Theta was also a high-ranking demon in Persian demonology. Another topic for another day. There's another book, and I believe I brought this up on last week, The CIA and the Cult of Intelligence by Victor Marchetti and John D. Marks. That book was banned up until 2 years ago, my friend. It said, and I quote, that the Church of Scientology is a weaponized tool of psychiatry, where they use precognition, cognition, and retrocognition. Now, remember the 2002 movie Minority Report with most popular, and it talks about precog. That term precog is always stated throughout the movie. That is a Church of Scientology template type of movie. So all of your listeners, if you have never watched that movie, definitely get that on DVD, okay, or watch it online. So then, through Minority...
Wait, Bishop, sorry, there's something important I want to raise about Minority Report, because you've spoken about Jack Parsons and his relationship with L. Ron Hubbard. So Jack Parsons was connected to the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and it's escaping me right now, but there was also a connection to Enrico Fermi, who was a particle physicist who
Hmm.
was pivotal in the creation of particle colliders and the Large Hadron
Wow.
Collider at CERN. And the initial purpose of that Large Hadron Collider, or at least one of the stated purposes of Enrico Fermi, was to use it to open a man-made singularity to communicate with extraterrestrial beings. Now, whether or not that's possible, it's certainly something that they wanted to do. I would also point out that quantum computing is only
Hmm.
possible due to quantum physics, which particle colliders and all of this stuff deal with superposition of particles and quantum mechanics and all this sort of thing. And, you know, when you mentioned CIA and the cult of intelligence, the first person to tell me about that was recovering CIA officer Kevin Shipp, who appears with me monthly on the Intelligence Assessment, another show that we offer on Patreon. Kevin said that the CIA is working with Amazon.com, and people have heard about this cloud data storage contract that Amazon.com has with the CIA. It was a $600 million contract. We know that Jeff Bezos, the owner of Amazon.com, also owns the Washington Post and Whole Foods and all that. But what Kevin told us is that their intention is to use all this big data aggregation and quantum computing to create predictive models, not only to know if you and I have a conversation about the movie Minority Report, perhaps later
Wow.
today you'll get an ad on your phone to download the movie. But that's responding to words that are spoken near your phone that get heard by voice recognition, and then you've somewhere on an app clicked OK, send me ads based on what I say. What Kevin Shipp suggests is that there is an intention on the part of the CIA to create a supercomputer that processes big data to predict human behavior.
You know what, my friend, you're hitting another nerve in me. I'm going to get into what they call Project Snow White during the 1970s and 80s, and really up until the middle part of the 90s. The Church of Scientology infiltrated the federal government, including the CIA and the FBI, through Operation Snow White. Okay, to set up moles. And matter of fact, like I said last week, the intelligence agency part of the Church of Scientology is called the Guardian's Office. Okay.
Hmm.
And I'm going to get into some high level spies, okay, of Scientologists who infiltrated the Pentagon, the CIA, the FBI. So
Hmm.
what you just said there, it hit another nerve with me. Again, Jason, you're a great host. This is the reason why it is so important for people on Crowdsource the Truth to have an open mind, to be awakened into the very spirit of what we're talking about. And I
Hmm.
think I touched on last week Ronald DeWolf, and like I did probably about 15, 20 minutes ago, the estranged son of L. Ron Hubbard. He had said through this massive database that was kept by the spy agency department within Scientology, the Guardian's office, he said under oath, okay, in an affidavit, that the term sex was always the key word asked by the auditor, okay, so that they could keep these words in the reactions of the candidate in their database. And so his father, L. Ron Hubbard, but it's interesting that Ronald DeWolf's grandfather, the father of L. Ron Hubbard, was a man by the name of Harry Ross Hubbard, who was a newspaper man in Omaha, Nebraska, but was fascinated with concerning black magic, okay, including L. Ron Hubbard's mother, Ladora May Hubbard, who was a practitioner of black magic, occultism, and
Huh.
hypnosis. And so
Wow.
I wanted to bring that up. And again, I'm not bashing any of your listeners who are Scientologists. My assignment here today is to expose the origins, the originations, or the word I love to use, the historicity of
Yeah.
the Church of Scientology here. And so, matter of fact, there's something, there was a term, a name, a word that came to my mind. It's called the Brain Initiative. That's a CIA program that was really funded during the Obama administration called the Brain Initiative Program. And look it up because they are using Scientologists even today within Operation Project Brain Initiative. Another
Is it
topic
from the
for another day.
National Institute of Health?
Yes, it
Wow.
absolutely. In conjunction with the Central Intelligence Agency and the FBI, the Brain Initiative, with Scientologists, with scholars within the scientific realm, are working to create super soldiers, and that's nothing new. You and I have been hearing about the super soldiers conspiracy for years, where
Hmm.
they would use Enochian magic. I kid you not, Jason, to build super soldiers to win psychological warfares. That's Scientology, winning psychological occultic warfare. So then L. Ron Hubbard settled with the FDA, like I said a few minutes ago in 1971, that he had to put a label in all of his e-meters stating that the e-meter was not a tool for the diagnosis of any disease. Hear me, Scientologists. So then the e-meter was not a tool, is not a tool for any diagnosis of any disease. So then remember, Jason, back in 1947, you and I talked about this last week. In the 1947 letter, the L. Ron Hubbard's entitled L. Ron Hubbard's Unanswered Letter of Despair to the VA. Again, L. Ron Hubbard's Unanswered Letter of Despair to the VA. And you can find that on military.id.me. It talks about that L. Ron Hubbard had psychological problems, psychotical problems. Now, he dies on January 24th, 1986, but he had a stroke, Jason, about a week before his death. Now, following his stroke, L. Ron Hubbard, his physician, Dr. Gene Denk, capital D-E-N-K, gave L. Ron Hubbard injections of Vistaril. Let me allow me to spell it. Capital Vistaril, which is a antipsychotic drug, Jason. Here
Hmm.
is a man that is anti-psychology, anti-psychiatric. He is against the American Psychological Complex. He's against the DSM-5, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of the American Psychiatric and Psychological Association, but yet he is dying because of an antipsychotic drug, which doctors use to treat mental disorders, mental disease, and mental syndromes. It's also treated to treat anxiety. So what I'm doing here, Jason, is exposing the hypocrisy of the founder of the Church of Scientology. His name was L. Ron Hubbard. You and I talked about on last week that back in the 1500s, and I believe the early part of the 1800s, up until 1608, John Dee, right? Dr. John Dee, during the time of Queen Elizabeth I, was an astrologer, was an occultist, was a modifier of what we call altator. So the art or the craft of modification in auditing did not start with L. Ron Hubbard. It goes back to the 1500s. John Dee, who was a high-ranking spy within the British Empire, okay, was a master practitioner of what we call Enochian keys, the Enochian, what we call psychological warfare. So then, what John Dee did, my friend, if you and I wanted to see Queen Elizabeth I in her court, we would have to go through a modification, what we call transcendental prayer. Transcendental prayer, which transcendence means a higher state of consciousness of existence. That the higher the existence, the higher the probability that you and I would see Queen Elizabeth I. So the court of Queen Elizabeth was called the Golden Dawn. L. Ron Hubbard taught a series, The Golden Dawn. We talked about the 2002 Minority Report movie that talks about precognition, cognition, retrocognition with Tom Cruise. So John Dee was a practitioner of the science and mental health cognition field. Now, it's interesting, Jason, that L. Ron Hubbard wrote a book that is actually now banned. He wrote a book called Child Dianetics. Again,
Child
Child
Diana.
Dianetics. Yes, in 1976.
Wow.
It talks about Dianetic processing for children. Within that book, my friend, he talks about he writes about the complete mystical records of John Dee, where L. Ron Hubbard, who is teaching parents how to dianetically process their children, he is transcribing from the 16th century occultist and warlock John Dee concerning, get this, angel channeling. So then, through angel channeling, through the altification of the mind that John Dee was teaching through witchcraft, the term of angel channeling. Okay, we talk about clairvoyance, clearing. So then, according to the Encyclopedia of New Age Beliefs, written by one of the most powerful theologians in this country, well qualified to talk about this topic, Dr. John Ankerberg and John Weldon. They talk about, my friend, in chapters 3, 4, and 5, that Babylon working in 1946, L. Ron Hubbard moved into the home of Jack Parsons the year before in 1945 in
Right.
Pasadena, California.
Yeah.
Jack Parsons, like you had said a couple of minutes ago, he was a rocket propulsion researcher at the California Institution of Technology. He was a part of Alyssa Crawley's Order Templi Orientis. He was also a part of the Theosophical Society. So then, as we're condensing and breaking down Scientology, the third opium war of deception, and to all of your listeners, continue to keep up with me because I'm going at a speed that is going to raise your consciousness to a level that you will never see Scientology in the same light again. L. Ron Hubbard, Jack Parson. Now, there is a book here, a university study, and this university study is called Nevim. Let me spell that, capital NVMEN, which is the academic study of religion, and the IHAR, capital IAHR, which means the International Association for the History of Religions, and that was edited by Tim Jensen and Armin W. Gertz. That they correspond, the NIVMEN, capital NVMEN, to the Greek word nexvim, capital NXIVM. Now remember the
Well, that's the
nexvim.
sex cult. Right. I was going to say, it sounds just like it.
Keith Raniere. Now, Keith Raniere was a Scientologist. Now, I guarantee you there are going to be people that's going to be calling you off the hook saying Bishop is lying. Listen, Keith Raniere and his co-founder, a woman by the name of Nancy Salzman, capital SALZAZMAN, capital SALZMAN. Now, it's interesting about this Nancy Salzman, my friend. She was a close friend of the Brofman sisters,
Right.
Claire Brofman and Sarah Brofman of the Brofman Seagram's dynasty out
Right.
of Montreal, Canada. Okay, where I believe their great grandfather Samuel Brofman during Prohibition shipped in alcohol into the United States. Another topic for another day. So we talk about Nevim or Nexium being a sex cult, okay, where Nancy Salzman was responsible for branding women, okay,
Mm-hmm.
and this cult was backed by Bronfman money. Okay. Now, there is a cult investigator by the name of Rick Ross, not the rapper, but the cult investigator. He talks about what did Keith Raniere take from Scientology. He says everything. In the op-ed on Tony Ortega's The Underground Bunker, March 8, 2019, he talks about Keith Raniere and the connection to his hero, L. Ron Hubbard, are 100% in right connection. So the inside connections, Jason, between this NXIVM, NXIVM, and Scientology can also be seen and read on the Epic Times, the epictimes.com, June 26, 2019. Now, Scientology, the third open war of deception. I want to get back to Dr. John Dee here for a minute, something that I found out on last night in researching, in my deep research, in preparing for you, my brother. John Dee, and for all of your listeners, if you get a chance, type in John Dee dash Hexen, capital HEXEN 2039. John Dee dash Hexen, capital HEXEN 2039. John Dee was a practitioner of what we call remote viewing. Remote viewing is another term for clairvoyance or clairvoyance. So Hexen 2039, and this is where we get the term hex or hexology or hexism, that which is a hex or a curse. Hexen 2039, it talks about the new military occult technology, Jason, for psychological warfare. Okay, and you can find this also concerning the same topic on Suzanne Trister, SuzanneTreister.net. SuzanneTrister.net. It talks about that John Dee was not only a modifier, an alterer during the 1500s, up until his death in 1608, but he was also a practitioner of what we call scrying, capital SCRYING, scrying. Now, what is a scryer? A scryer is a person that gazes into like what we call a crystal ball. Now, a scryer is another term for witch or warlock or clairvoyeur, one who looks into that which has been cleared or modified. So John Dee has a heavy connection. We're talking about Scientology, the third opium war of deception here on Cross was the truth. John Dee has a heavy connection, Jason, to Sir Francis Walsingham, capital WALSINGHAM. Francis Walsingham was the founder, Jason, of the British Secret Service. So then, John Dee, who was also a high-ranking spy within the British Empire during the 1500s, up until his death in 1608, works with the British Secret Service to predict through scrying, through modification, through altering future military wars. Okay, Jason, this is a precursor to the 1972 to 1995 U.S. military remote viewing program. Okay,
Right. That movie,
Yeah.
The Men Who Stare at Goats.
Exactly. We talked about goat riding, I believe, a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, yeah.
Remote viewing. Yes, it's see, it all interconnects. Every part of this 8-part series on eugenics, to your listeners, if you have not listened to all 8 parts, even up to this very present day, listen to the prior 7. In order to understand what I'm talking about today, you have to listen to the prior 7 parts of eugenics. So this U.S. military-backed remote viewing program, what we call Enochian language in keys, and we talked about that word 15, 20 minutes ago. The Enochian language in Keys, Jason, was adapted by Aleister Crowley, including Jack Parsons, including L. Ron Hubbard, where he mentions of the term remote viewing in his 1938 book, Excalibur. Excalibur is connected to the Knights of the Round Table, like you talked about last week. So through remote viewing, and L. Ron Hubbard was a lover of what we call remote viewing drawings. That's another topic for another day. And so if all of your listeners, if you get a chance, just type in supernatural abilities in Scientology. Supernatural abilities in Scientology on Wikipedia with multiple links that will lead you to links that will verify what I'm about to say. So in Scientology, it talks about telepathic senses, or what we call telekinesis, remote viewing, telekinesis. That's through the e-meter machine. Okay. Now it talks about also, Jason, and this is really powerful stuff what I'm about to reveal to you, my friend. There was two Scientologists, a man by the name of Hal Puthoff, capital Puthoff, and Ingo Swann, capital Ingo Swann, capital Swann. They were Scientologists, Jason, okay, who worked for the Stanford Research Institute, which was the CIA's project called Project Stargate. Now, remember the 1994 movie Stargate?
Yeah.
That was a CIA-funded Hollywood movie. All of this traces back to L. Ron Hubbard. So through remote viewing, Hal Puthoff and Ingo Swann, both Scientologists, worked at the Stanford Research Center for the Central Intelligence Agency's Project Stargate in the 1970s, where they examined parapsychology research along with another Scientologist, a man by the name of Russell Targ, capital Targ. Now, in the 1990s, Jason, we're talking about Scientology, the third opium war of deception. During the 1990s, Stargate Project, okay, which had a code, which was the code word. Stargate Project was the code word in 1991 that was used by the U.S. Army unit established in 1978. Guess where? At Fort Meade, Maryland, through the DIA, Jason, the Defense Intelligence Agency, where the DIA today is infiltrated with Scientologists.
Really?
Remember the 1994 movie Stargate? You just getting ready to say something, Jason?
Well, I'm just surprised to hear that. I mean, people are going to remember that General Michael Flynn was the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. I didn't know anything about Scientology being involved with that.
Yeah, they are. As a matter of fact, through Operation Snow White, that has not ended. And this is the reason why the Church of Scientology is untouched today. This is the reason why, because they are interwoven, Jason, the Church of Scientology, with the Central Intelligence Agency, including the FBI. Even though the FBI raided many Scientology churches throughout the country, and I believe if he has not changed his mind, I believe Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, has banned Scientology. Now, if there are Scientology centers and churches, it means that Putin changed his mind. But I know going back 10, 20 years ago, Putin wanted nothing to do with Scientology. So then if let's just get an opportunity, Jason, type in Clearwater's son, Nancy and her neo-Nazis. Again, Clearwater's son, that's a newspaper in Clearwater, Florida. Nancy and her neo-Nazis, December 1979. And you can also find that on lermanet.org, capital Lermanet, lermanet.org. It shows, Jason, a photo of a Scientologist wearing a Nazi
Ooh,
uniform.
yeah.
It shows. Now, what I'm about to say, I cannot substantiate what I'm about to say, my friend. They're saying that that could have been the father of David Miscavige, the present day director and leader of the Church of Scientology. They cannot be substantiated, okay? But that photo is showing a Scientologist wearing a Nazi uniform. Wait a minute now, but they're connected to the hip to the Nation of Islam. L. Ron Hubbard was a known racist. So L. Ron Hubbard is a known racist. Why is Louis Farrakhan connected to Scientology? There's another website, and just type in would Scientology have been popular in Nazi Germany? Would Scientology have been popular in Nazi Germany? Okay. Many Scientologists, Jason, and you can look that up on thequora.com, capital QUORA.com. And to your Scientologist listeners, just have an open mind. Scientologists, okay, even today, they were taught by L. Ron Hubbard, even up to this very present day, and have an open mind, that they were Nazis in their past lifetimes, Jason.
Wow.
Scientologists. A powerful story in the just look up the terms clear takeover, okay? Clear takeover, or projects.tampabay.com. Projects.tampabay.com. Clear takeover. It shows that the Church of Scientology, my friend, has taken over Clearwater, Florida. They are spending millions and millions of dollars, taking over property within notice Clearwater, Florida. Now, remember, give me about 2 minutes and we're done here, Jason, as we wrap up this 8-part series on eugenics.
Mm-hmm.
There was a spy master, okay, within the Church of Scientology, a man by the name of Henning Helt. Henning, capital Henning, Helt, capital HELD, like in David T. Henning Helt, Jason, was a spy master within the Church of Scientology, going back to the 1970s, who went to prison for L. Ron Hubbard. He was second in command of the Guardian Office, which is the intelligence arm of the Church of Scientology. So then, he was the deputy guardian or the spy master of the Guardian Office, which was and which is still is the spy network apparatus of the Church of Scientology. Through the Snow White program, Project Snow White, during the 70s and 80s, this man, Henning Helt, okay, along with the wife of L. Ron Hubbard, Mary Sue Hubbard, who was the director of the Guardian's office, okay, infiltrated the FBI, infiltrated the CIA, infiltrated every department of the U.S. government. How does this happen, Jason?
I don't know.
The intelligence community is in complicity with the Church of Scientology. Now, there's a woman who's the top spy master in England for the Church of Scientology. Her name is Jane Kimbler, capital Kemble. And so, in other words, she was, if she's still alive, was the top spy master for the Church of Scientology within the United Kingdom. And so, with KGB backing, my friend, going back to the 60s, okay, in connection to MK Ultra, okay, the EBARC interrogation program of the Central Intelligence Agency, where they also had an Operation Snow White. So all of the tactics that the Church of Scientology uses, Jason, are the same interrogational tactics, okay, that the CIA uses.
Huh.
So then they're in cahoots with each other. So there's front companies today, and I believe that On last week, I touched on, remember the Opium Wars. Okay, we talked about the Opium Wars. Okay,
Yep.
from 1839 to 1860. And by the way, someone just sent me an email. They wanted me to go over when I said last week that Dianetics in the Church and Scientology is a mixture of the Theosophical Society. They are a mixture of the Thelema Seeker Society.
Yeah.
They are a mixture of the Rosh Hashanah Society, of the Philosophical Society of Manly P. Hall, okay, the Kemetic Orthodoxy that they teach. But getting to, and we're done here, to the two Opium Wars from 1839 to 1860. William Jordan and James Matheson, there's a corporation today called the Jardine Matheson Corporation, which 10 years ago, I don't know if this is the case today, Jason, but 10 years ago, the Church of Scientology had stock in the Jardine Matheson Corporation in Hong Kong. This is the reason why I connect the Church of Scientology with the history of the two Opium Wars. The first Opium War, 1839 to 1842. The second Opium War from 1856 to 1860. Jardine Matheson has a descendant from his progenitor, and that is Vonnie Matheson,
Oh.
or Dave Vonnie. Okay, so these connections. Someone wrote on your page the other day, man. I got on your YouTube page. They said, Bishop, why are you connecting so many dots? We have to stop thinking lazy. We have to stop thinking on a lazy level. We have to connect these historical dots. So then, the Jardine Matheson Corporation is a multi-billion-dollar global conglomerate corporation because of past Opium Wars. Robert Bennett Forbes has a descendant, Steve Forbes, of the Forbes magazine. Do you know, my friend, that Robert Bennett Forbes, along with William Jardine, okay, and along with James Matheson, profited from the opium drug trade?
Well, I was going to say, Bishop, I don't know if you can see the screen share right now, but look at that logo for this Jardine Matheson company. Is it, I mean, it looks like kind of
Wow,
like a cartoon of a poppy plant, doesn't it?
yes. Oh my God. And you know what, Jason? I gotta confess, I never saw that as a poppy plant before until you just said it just now.
But it's got to
Again,
be.
this it's got to be, and that is not by accident.
Hmm.
That's not by accident.
They're proud
So
of their origins.
absolutely, they are proud. And there's a book called "The CIA as Organized Crime" by Douglas Valentine.
Yep.
The CIA as Organized Crime by Douglas Valentine, who talks about the two Opium Wars, and that the third Opium War is the Opium War of religion. That religion has become the opium of the people. So then,
Oh,
James
yeah.
Matheson, William Jordan, Robert Bennett Forbes, connecting to Steve Forbes, Forbes magazine, and the Forbes dynasty are all interconnected to this conspiracy through Scientology. Okay, and I just want to wrap up this this 8-part series, and to your listeners, my friend, if you get a chance, look up the logo, okay, for the what I call the United States Intelligence Community logo, okay, on orthochristian.com, or just type in United States Intelligence Community logo. It has an 8-pointed star, which is the exact amount of points of the Church of Scientology's logo. Not just the two pyramids, but the cross, all right? The Rose of Sharon cross, the 8-pointed cross, which is connected to the intelligence community today, my friend. This
Right.
is some powerful.
That Rosicrucian cross came up earlier in the show. I didn't mention it, but I was showing it on screen, I think, the Scientology cross, and I can't recall if it was you, Bishop, who I was asking about all these different things that have the word rose in them. Um,
Yeah.
the the sorry, I had a call coming in there. Some people probably don't like what we're talking about, but
Yeah.
the Rose term shows up so frequently. Rose Law Firm. We've got this Rosemont something or other that was sending money to Hunter Biden. We've got Nappy Rose Productions, which was Richard Mendenhall's company. There's all these different Rose things. Oh, no. There was the whistleblower who is the impeachment CIA whistleblower whose name we're not allowed to mention on YouTube. He's got a lawyer named Mark Zaid who's got some Rose linked charity that pays for the legal defense of these whistleblowers.
And to your listeners, man, I got you hit another nerve with me with the term rose. To
Rose
your listeners,
Compass,
yeah,
Compass Rose.
exactly. There is a plantation in Jamaica, a historical plantation called Rose Hall. That it's in Montego Bay, Rose Hall. So look up the history of Rose Hall, okay? And the owners, the Palmers, okay, were Scientologists of that day who were practitioners of the scientific method of what they call clairvoyance, where they would decapitate their slaves and then use the organs of the decapitated slaves as an offering unto the gods, unto a matter of fact, they practice what they call parapsychology and psychic surgery, the decapitation of slaves, psychic surgery, and also the Palmers, okay, practice, and excuse me, I'm about to say, Jason, they were practitioners of what they call urine therapy. Urine, yes. They would force their slaves to drink urine for the purification of their slaves to have strength to work in the fields. So the Rose Hall, and matter of fact, there's an old tradition of the witch of Rose Hall, okay, who had traditionally, according to tradition, murdered her husbands and murdered her slaves. I just wanted to point that out because you hit a nerve with me concerning the term rose here. There was one of the plantation owner was a man by the name of John Palmer. Okay, John Palmer and his wife Annie Palmer. Annie Palmer had murdered three of her husbands, including John Palmer. Annie Palmer was a practitioner of Scientology before there was an L. Ron Hubbard.
Ooh.
So Jamaicans, they know what I'm talking about. So that Rose Hall, Annie Palmer, who was a high-ranking witch, she knew parapsychology and phrenology, psychic surgery by decapitating people. That's what the auditor does today, my friend. No, they don't decapitate people physically, but they decapitate them psychologically. The E meter is a present day psychic surgery phenomenon, okay? Reiki and urine therapy, which was perfected by John W. Armstrong, who was a Scientologist before there was an L. Ron Hubbard. But people are going to say, I don't believe it, Bishop. I really don't care because my job is to expose the truth. So when you said Rose, man of God, it hit a nerve with me. So Rose Hall, Montego Bay, look up that history as we close out this 8-part Eugenics series entitled Scientology, the Third Open War of Deception.
Wow. So many connections there, Bishop. We've got this book here, The Water of Life, a treatise on urine therapy by J.W. Armstrong. So,
wow.
yeah.
See, oh my God, that's another, you talking about water. Clearwater, Florida.
Right.
Wait a minute now. So the Church of Scientology is paying off local government officials who are Democrats, paying them off to take over Clearwater, Florida. And if President Trump is listening, he's got to shut down the Church of Scientology. It's not a religion, it's a cult. That's why the federal government, through the FBI, was going to shut it down during the 70s. The L. Ron Hubbard legally changed it from a corporation to a religion so that his religion could be protected. But it is a cult. That's all it is, which is the third opium war of deception. And the term opium comes from the Sanskrit term opion, right? Capital Opion, which means modification, clearing, okay? The compartmentalization of one's thinking, okay? That goes back to Scientology, the third open war of deception. This has been probably one of the most powerful series I have ever done, Jason. I am so glad that you're giving me the opportunity to really share this with your audience here. And as we're talking about the hypothesis of this mind control, MK Ultra, which goes back to April of 1953 through Sidney Gottlieb, who had set up the Church of Scientology in December of 53, 8 months later, with his friend L. Ron Hubbard, okay? Well, who was the director of the CIA then? Alan Welsh. Who's Alan Welsh? He was also a Scientologist. Jason, all of these connections here expose the very foundation, the template of what we call the Church of Scientology. And I'm telling you, to all of your listeners, share this interview through Jason. Share this interview with family members. Share it with every person, because it is going to open up your consciousness. It's going to open up your mind to a new level that you have never thought in before. Okay, this is very important here. How complex that the Church of Scientology is set up. David Miscavige, he's a high school dropout. Now, I'm not condemning him for that, but he is a deep state two, a strong man two of manipulation. That's why they're not doing anything to him, Jason, because he's a part of it, just like Louis Farrakhan is. All of these entities being supplied and benefited by the same power. So we have to expose this as we talk about and close out this Eugenics series today on Scientology, the third open war of deception.
Yeah. And just real briefly, we had a couple of comments from our viewers today, Bishop. Apparently, Minister Farrakhan is back on Twitter. I think he was banned for calling Jewish people termites or something like that. We know that my friend Laura Loomer has been permanently banned for Twitter, from Twitter. But here we see Minister Farrakhan is back in there, sort of spreading his hateful message.
Yeah, that makes see, this is why people like you and I, we get so we call it righteous indignation. See, the government allows people like Farrakhan, especially from the left, to control what we call the narrative. His father was a man by the name of Percival Clark. Now, I brought up his name a couple of weeks ago. Percival Clark is of Jewish blood with a Portuguese background. The father of Louis Farrakhan and those in the Nation of Islam, they would deny it to their dying breath. He was a Jewish man of Jewish blood, also of Portuguese blood. So what is the hatred that Farrakhan has toward the Jewish people? But yet, fake news, CNN, NBC, MSNBC, okay, is propagating and supporting this man. It's demonic. And this is the reason why when Farrakhan dies, the Nation of Islam will be no more. His day is coming. Now, I'm not prophesying death, but I'm telling you, he's going to have to pay for his part in the assassination of Malcolm X. But it gets back to Farrakhan represents the opium of the people. And this is the reason why they target uneducated people, uneducated men. Now, most of the men in the Nation of Islam, okay, only have a high school degree. I'm not condemning them. Listen, now you got some highly educated ones like Dr. Wesley Muhammad, who's brilliant. But most of these men and women are uneducated. That's by design. That is a opium tactic by the deep state through Louis Farrakhan. That's why Malcolm X was a threat. Malcolm X could not be bought. Malcolm X could not be manipulated. Malcolm X was exposing H.L. Hunt and his complicity, right? We talked about this a few weeks ago in supplying $100,000 a year to Elijah Muhammad. Malcolm X exposed this. Malcolm said, I am not going to partake of the opium war of deception. And this is the reason why they took him out. And so not just did the Nation of Islam take out Malcolm, and of course the CIA and the FBI, but also part of the money which paid off the assassins, Jason, in this political layer was the Rockefeller Foundation. Another topic for another day. Scientology, the third opium war of deception. My friend, this has been a deep, deep interview today, and I really thank God for you, Jason, and for your platform because you're touching so many lives around the world. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Bishop. And just real quickly before we go, back to this logo for Jardine Matheson. We had a viewer saying that they felt that it looked perhaps like thistle. I don't know. This is seeming to have a purple body and red stuff poking out the top of it. The thistle looks a little bit more green with purple poking out. I think that the poppy is what it's supposed to be. It's hard to say. It's a sort of a cartoon interpretation, but definitely looks more like a poppy to me. And you're talking about how they were involved in the Opium War, so it would make sense. Again, this is just something you and I can point out, and we leave it for people to investigate further. And Bishop, I'll see you next week.
See you next week, my friend, with a brand new series, and we're going to be announcing that in a few days. Thank you so much, Jason. Scientology, the third opium war of deception. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, and people should tune in to the Bishop's radio show on Life Radio 92.9 FM. You can find him there on liferadionj.com/Gaiters, and you can financially support the global spiritual revolution that the Bishop is leading by going to paypal.me/GSRR Media Group and becoming a sponsor on there. People can also sponsor Crowdsource the Truth by going to subscribestar.com/crowdsource the truth or patreon.com/crowdsource the truth. You're going to get access to a massive library of exclusive content that you're only getting if you're a sponsor. It's growing every day, and it's a great way to keep this show sustainable. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you later.